All right, we're back. I think we're going to do record 6 through 9 today. We'll see what time looks like, and continue on with "We" by Eugene's Mayatin. I think it's pronounced. I don't know how you pronounce that in Russian. It's like Yveg something. I don't know. So I'll stick with Eugene Zamayatin. Last week we went through records 1 through 5, or chapters 1 through 5. So we're going to dive right in. I just got out of the shower and have a few things to do today. So I was going to knock this out kind of early. An accident. The cursed is clear. 24 hours. I must repeat, I have made it my duty to write, concealing nothing. Therefore, I must point out now that, sad as it may be, the process of the hardening and crystallization of life has evidently not been completed even here in our state. A few steps more, and we will be within reach of our ideal. The ideal, it's clear, is to be found where nothing happens. But here, I will give you an example. In the state paper, I read that in 2 days, the holiday of justice will be celebrated on the Plaza of the Cube. This means that again, some number has impeded the smooth running of the great state machine. Again, something that was not foreseen or forecalculated happened. Besides, something happened to me. True, it occurred during the personal hour, that is, during the time specifically assigned to unforeseen circumstances. Yet, at about 16, to be exact, 10 minutes to 16, I was at home. Suddenly, the telephone. D503? A woman's voice. Yes. Are you free? Yes. It is I 330. I shall run over to you immediately. We shall go together to the ancient house. Agreed? I 330. This I irritates me, repels me. She almost frightens me. But just because of that, I answered, yes. In 5 minutes, we were in an arrow. Blue sky of May. The bright sun and its own golden arrow buzzed behind us without catching up and without lagging behind. Ahead of us, a white cataract of a cloud. Yes, a white cataract of a cloud, nonsensically fluffy like the cheeks of an ancient Cupid. That cloud was disturbing. The front window was open. It was windy. Lips were dry. Against one's will, one passed the tongue constantly over them and thought about lips. Already we saw in the distance the hazy green spots on the other side of the wall. Then a slight involuntary sinking of the heart. Down, 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 as if from a steep mountain, and we were at the ancient house. The strange, delicate, blind establishment is covered all around with a glass shell. Otherwise, it would undoubtedly have fallen to pieces long ago. At the glass door, we found an old woman, all wrinkles, especially her mouth, which was all made up of folds and pleats. Her lips had disappeared, having folded inward. Her mouth seemed grown together. It seemed incredible that she should be able to talk, and yet she did. Well, dear, come again to see my little house? Her wrinkles shone, that is, her wrinkles diverged like rays, which created the impression of shining. Yes, grandmother, answered I 330. The wrinkles continued to shine. And the sun, eh? Do you see it? You rogue, you? I know, it's all right. Go all by yourselves. I shall remain here in the sunshine. Hmm. Apparently, my companion was a frequent guest here. Something disturbed me. Probably that unpleasant optical impression, the cloud on the smooth blue surface of the sky. While we were ascending the wide, dark stairs, I 330 said, I love her, that old woman. Why? I don't know. Perhaps for her mouth, or perhaps for nothing, just so. I shrugged my shoulders. She continued walking upstairs with a faint smile, or perhaps without a smile at all. I felt very guilty. It is clear that there must not be love just so, but love because of, for all elements of nature should be. It's clear, I began, but I stopped at that word and cast a furtive look at I 330. Did she notice it or not? She looked somewhere, down. Her eyes were closed like curtains. It struck me suddenly. Evening about 22, you walk on that avenue, and among the brightly lighted, transparent cubic cells are dark spaces. Lowered curtains, and there behind the curtains, what has she behind her curtains? Why did she phone me today? Why did she bring me here? And all this. She opened a heavy, squeaking, opaque door, and we found ourselves in a somber, disorderly space. They called it an apartment. The same strange royal musical instrument and a wild, unorganized, crazy loudness of colors and forms like their ancient music. A white plane above dark blue walls, red, green, orange, bindings of ancient books, yellow bronze candelabra, a statue of Buddha, furniture with lines distorted by ellipse, impossible to reduce to any clear equation. I could hardly bear that chaos, but my companion apparently possessed a stronger constitution. This is my most beloved, she suddenly caught herself, again a smile, bite, and white sharp teeth. To be more exact, the most nonsensical of all apartments. Or to be most exact, of all the states. Thousands of microscopic states, fighting eternal wars, pitiless like, oh yes, it's clear, said I 330 with apparent sincerity. We passed through a room where we found a few small children's beds. Children in those days were also private property. Then more rooms, glimmering mirrors, somber closets, unbearably loud colored divans, an enormous fireplace, a large mahogany bed. Our contemporary, beautiful, transparent, eternal glass was represented here only by pitiful, delicate, tiny squares of windows. And to think, here there was love, just so. They burned and tortured themselves. Again, the curtain of the eyes was lowered. What a stupid, uneconomical spending of human energy. Am I not right? She spoke as though reading my thoughts, but in her smile there remained always that irritating X. There behind the curtains, something was going on. I don't know what, but something that made me lose my patience. I wanted to quarrel with her, to scream at her, exactly to scream. But I had to agree. It was impossible not to agree. We stopped in front of a mirror. At that moment, I saw only her eyes. An idea came to me. Human beings are built as nonsensically as these stupid apartments. Human heads are opaque, and there are only two very small windows that lead inside, the eyes. She seemed to have guessed my thoughts. She turned around. Well, here they are, my eyes. Well, this suddenly, then silence. There in front of me were two gloomy dark windows, and behind them, inside, such strange hidden life. I saw there only fire, burning like a peculiar fireplace, and unknown figures resembling. All this was certainly very natural. I saw in her eyes the reflection of my own face, but my feelings were unnatural and not like me. Evidently, the depressing influence of the surroundings was beginning to tell on me. I definitely felt fear. I felt as if I were trapped in a strange cage. I felt that I was caught in the wild hurricane of ancient life. Do you know? Said I 330. Stepped for a moment into the next room. Her voice came from there, from inside, from behind the dark window eyes, where the fireplace was blazing. I went in, sat down. From a shelf on the wall, there looked straight into my face, somewhat smiling, the snub-nosed, asymmetrical physiognomy of one of the ancient poets. I think it was Pushkin. Why do I sit here enduring this smile with such resignation? And what is this all about? Why am I here? And why all these strange sensations, this irritating, repellent female, this strange game? The door of the closet slammed. There was the rustle of silk. I felt it difficult to restrain myself from getting up and I don't remember exactly. Probably I wanted to tell her a number of disagreeable things, but she had already appeared. She was dressed in a short, bright yellowish dress, black hat, black stockings. The dress was of light silk. I saw clearly very long black stockings above the knees, an uncovered neck, and the shadow between. It's clear that you want to seem original, but is it possible that you— is it clear, interrupted I 330, that to be original means to stand out among others? Consequently, to be original means to violate the law of equality. What was called in the language of the ancients to be common is with us only fulfilling of one's duty. For Yes, yes, exactly, I interrupted impatiently, and there is no use, no use. She came near the bust of the snub-nosed poet, lowered the curtain on the wildfire of her eyes, and said, this time I think she was really in earnest, or perhaps she merely wanted to soften my impatience with her. But she said a very reasonable thing. Don't you think it surprising that once people could stand types like this, not only stand them, but worship them? What a slavish spirit, don't you think so? It's clear, that is, I wanted, damn that cursed, it's clear. Oh, yes, I understand. But in fact, these poets were stronger rulers than the crowned ones. Why were they not isolated and exterminated? In our state, oh, yes, in our state, I began. But suddenly she laughed. I saw the laughter in her eyes. I saw the resounding, sharp curve of that laughter, flexible, tense like a whip. I remember my whole body shivered. I thought of grasping her, and I don't know what. I had to do something. It mattered little what. Automatically, I looked at my golden badge, glanced at my watch, 10 minutes to 17. Don't you think it's time to go? I said in a polite a tone as possible. And if I should ask you to stay here with me. What? Do you realize what you are saying? In 10 minutes, I must be in the auditorium, and all the numbers must take the prescribed courses in art and science, said I at 3:30 with my voice. Then she lifted the curtain, opened her eyes. Through the dark windows, the fire was blazing. I have a physician in the medical bureau. He is registered to me. If I ask him, he will give you a certificate declaring that you are ill. All right? Understood. At last I understood where this game was leading. Ah, so, but you know that every honest number, as a matter of course, must immediately go to the office of the guardians, and as a matter not of course, sharp smile bite. I am very curious to know, will you or will you not go to the guardians? Are you going to remain here? I grasped the doorknob. It was a brass knob, a cold brass knob, and I heard cold like brass her voice. Just a minute, may I? She went to the telephone, called a number. I was so upset it escaped me and spoke loudly. I shall be waiting for you in the ancient house. Yes, yes, alone. I turned the cold brass knob. May I take the arrow? Oh, yes, certainly, please. In the sunshine at the gate, the old woman was dozing like a plant. Again, I was surprised to see her grown together mouth open and to hear her say, and your lady, did she remain alone? Alone. The mouth of the old woman grew together again. She shook her head. Apparently, even her weakening brain understood the stupidity and the danger of that woman's behavior. At 17 o'clock exactly, I was at the lecture. There I suddenly realized that I did not tell the whole truth to the old woman. I 330 was not there alone now. Possibly this fact that I involuntarily told the old woman a lie was torturing me now and distracting my attention. Yes, not alone. That was the point. After 21:30 o'clock, I had a free hour. I could therefore have gone to the office of the guardians to make my report. But after that stupid adventure, I was so tired. Besides, the law provides 2 days. I shall have time tomorrow. I have another 24 hours. Record 7. An eyelash, Taylor, Henbane, and Lily of the Valley. Night, green, orange, blue. The red royal instrument, the yellow dress, then a brass Buddha. Suddenly it lifted the brass eyelids, and sap began to flow from it, from Buddha. Sap also from the yellow dress, even in the mirror, drops of sap, and from the large bed and from the children's bed, and soon from myself. It is horror, mortally sweet horror. I woke up, soft blue light, the glass of the walls, of the chairs, of the table was glimmering. This calmed me. My heart stopped palpitating. Sap? Buddha? How absurd. I am sick, it is clear. I never saw dreams before. They say that to see dreams was a common, normal thing with the ancients. Yes, after all, their life was a whirling carousel, green, orange, Buddha, sap. But we, people of today, we know all too well that dreaming is a serious mental disease. I, is it possible that my brain, this precise, clean, glittering mechanism, like a chronometer, without a speck of dust on it, is, yes, it is now. I really feel there in the brain some foreign body like an eyelash in the eye. One does not feel one's whole body, but this eye with a hair in it, one cannot forget it for a second. The cheerful, crystalline sound of the bell at my head, 7 o'clock, time to get up, to the right and to the left. As in mirrors, to the right and to the left through the glass walls, I see others like myself, other rooms like my own, other clothes like my own, movements like mine, duplicated thousands of times. This invigorates me. I see myself as a part of an enormous, vigorous, united body. And what precise beauty! Not a single superfluous gesture or bow or turn. Yes, this Taylor was undoubtedly the greatest genius of the ancients. True, he did not come to the idea of applying his method to the whole life, to every step throughout the 24 hours of the day. He was unable to integrate his system from 1 o'clock to 24. I cannot understand the ancients. How could they write whole libraries about some Kant and take only slight notice of Taylor, of this prophet who saw 10 centuries ahead? Breakfast was over. The hymn of the United States had been harmoniously sung, rhythmically, four abreast. We walked to the elevators. The motors buzzed faintly, and swiftly we went down, 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 the heart sinking slightly. Again, that stupid dream, or some unknown function of that dream. Oh, yes, yesterday in the Arrow, then down, down. Well, it is all over anyhow. Period. It is very fortunate that I was so firm and brusque with her. The car of the Underground Railway carried me swiftly to the place where the motionless, beautiful body of the integral, not yet spiritualized by fire, was glittering in the docks in the sunshine. With closed eyes, I dreamed in formula. Again, I calculated in my mind what was the initial velocity required to tear the integral away from the Earth. Every second, the mass of the integral would change because of the expenditure of the explosive fuel. The equation was very complex with transcendent figures. As in a dream, I felt right here in the firm, calculated world, how someone sat down at my side, barely touching me and saying, "Pardon?" I opened my eyes. At first, apparently because of an association with the integral, I saw something impetuously fly into the distance ahead. I saw pink wing ears sticking out on the sides of it, then the curve of the overhanging back of the head, the double curved letter S. Through the glass walls of my algebraic world, again I felt the eyelash in my eye. I felt something disagreeable. I felt that today I must. Certainly, please. I smiled at my neighbor and bowed. I saw number S 4711 glittering on his golden badge. That is why I associated with him with the letter S from the very first moment, an optical impression which remained unregistered by consciousness. His eyes sparkled, two sharp little drills. They were revolving swiftly, drilling in deeper and deeper. It seemed that in a moment they would drill into the bottom and would see something that I do not even dare to confess to myself. That bothersome eyelash became wholly clear to me. S was one of them, one of the guardians, and it would be the simplest thing immediately, without deferring, to tell him everything. I went yesterday to the ancient house. My voice was strange, husky, flat. I tried to cough. That is good. It must have given you material for some instructive deductions. Yes, but you see, I was not alone. I was in the company of I 330, and then I 330. You are fortunate. She is a very interesting, gifted woman. She has a host of admirers. But he too, then, during the promenade, perhaps he is even assigned to her he number. No, it is impossible to tell him. Unthinkable. This was perfectly clear. Yes, yes, certainly, very. I smiled more and more broadly, more stupidly, and felt as if my smile made me look foolish, naked. The drills reached the bottom. Revolving continually, they screwed themselves back into his eyes. S smiled double curvedly, nodded, and slid to the exit. I covered my face with the newspaper. I felt as if everybody were looking at me, and soon I forgot about the eyelash, about the little drills, about everything. I was so upset by what I read in the paper. According to authentic information, traces of an organization which still remains out of reach have again been discovered. This organization aims at liberation from the beneficial yoke of the state. Liberation. It is remarkable how persistent human criminal instincts are. I use deliberately the word criminal, for freedom and crime are as closely related as, well, as the movement of of an arrow and its speed. If the speed of an arrow equals zero, the arrow is motionless. If human liberty is equal to zero, man does not commit any crime. That is clear. The way to rid man of criminality is to rid him of freedom. No sooner did we rid ourselves of freedom, in the cosmic sense, centuries are only a no sooner, than suddenly some unknown pitiful degenerates. No, I cannot understand why I did not go immediately yesterday to the Bureau of Guardians. Today, after 16 o'clock, I shall go without fail. At 16:10, I was in the street. At once I noticed 090 at the corner. She was all rosy with the light at the encounter. She has a simple, round mind, a timely meeting. She would understand and lend me support. Or no, I did not need any support. My decision was firm. The pipes of the musical tower thundered out harmoniously the march, the same daily march. How wonderful the charm of this dailiness, of this constant repetition and mirror like smoothness. Out for a walk, her round blue eyes opened toward me widely, blue windows leading inside. I penetrate there unhindered. There is nothing in there. I mean, nothing foreign, nothing superfluous. No, not for a walk. I must go. I told her where. And to my astonishment, I saw her rosy round mouth form a crescent with the horns downward, as if she tasted something sour. This angered me. You she numbers seem to be incurably eaten up by prejudices. You are absolutely unable to think abstractly. Forgive me the word, but this I call bluntness of mind. You? To the spies? How ugly. And I went to the botanical garden and brought you a branch of lily of the valley. Why? And I? Why this? And just like a woman. Angrily, this I must confess. I snatched the flowers. Here they are, your lilies of the valley. Well, smell them. Good? Yes. Why not use a little bit of logic? The lilies of the valley smell good, all right, but you cannot say about an odor, about the conception of an odor, that it is good or bad, can you? You can't, can you? There is the smell of lilies of the valley, and there is the disagreeable smell of henbane. Both are odors. The ancient state the ancient states had their spies. We have ours. Yes, spies. I am not afraid of words, but is it not clear to you that the spies were henbane? Here they are lilies of the valley? Yes, lilies of the valley. Yes. The rosy crescent quivered. Now I understand that it was only my impression, but at that moment I was certain she was going to laugh. I shouted still louder, yes, lilies of the valley, and there is nothing funny about it. Nothing funny. The smooth round globes of heads passing by were turning towards us. 090 gently took my hand. You are so strange today. Are you ill? My dream, yellow color, Buddha. It was at once borne clearly upon me that I must go to the medical bureau. Yes, you are right. I am sick, I said with joy. That seems to be me in an inexplicable contradiction. There was nothing to be joyful about. You must go at once to the doctor. You understand that. You are obliged to be healthy. It seems strange to have to prove it to you. My dear O, of course you are right. Absolutely right. I did not go to the Bureau of Guardians. I could not. I had to go to the medical bureau. They kept me there until 17 o'clock. In the evening, incidentally, the Bureau of Guardians is closed evenings. In the evening, O came to see me. The curtains were not lowered. We busied ourselves with the arithmetical problems of an ancient textbook. This occupation always calms and purifies our thoughts. O sat over her notebook, her head slightly inclined to the left. She was so assiduous that she poked out her left cheek with the tongue from within. She looked so childlike, so charming. I felt everything in me was pleasant, precise, and simple. She left. I remained alone. I breathed deeply 2 times. It is very good exercise before retiring for the night. Suddenly, an unexpected odor reminiscent of something very disagreeable. I soon found out what was the matter. A branch of the lily of the valley was hidden in my bed. Immediately, everything was aroused again, came up from the bottom. Decidedly, it was tactless on her part to put these lilies of the valley there surreptitiously. Well, true, I did not go. I didn't, but was it my fault that I had felt indisposed? Record 8. An irrational root, R13, the triangle. It was long ago, during my school days, when I first encountered the square root of minus one. I remember it all very clearly. A bright globe-like class hall, about 100 round heads of children. And Ploppa, our mathematician, we nicknamed him Ploppa. It was a very much used up mathematician, loosely screwed together, as the member of the class who was on duty that day would put the plug into the socket behind. We would hear it first from the loudspeaker. Plop, 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 shh. Only then the lesson would follow. One day, Ploppa told us about irrational numbers. And I remember I went and banged the table with my fist and cried, I do not want that square root of minus one. Take that square root of minus one away. This irrational root grew into me as something strange, foreign, terrible. It tortured me. It could not be thought out. It could not be defeated because it was beyond reason. Now that square root of minus one is here again. I read over what I have written, and I see clearly that I was insincere with myself, that I lied to myself in order to avoid seeing that square root of minus one. My sickness is all nonsense. I could go there. I feel sure that if such a thing had happened a week ago, I should have gone without hesitating. Why then am I unable to go now? Why? Today, for instance, and at exactly 16:10, I stood before the glittering glass wall. Above was the shining golden sun-like sign, Bureau of Guardians. Inside, a long queue of bluish-gray eunuchs awaiting their turns, faces shining like oil lamps in an ancient temple. They had come to accomplish a great thing. They had come to put on the altar of the United States their beloved ones, their friends, their own selves. My whole being craved to join them, yet I could not. My feet were as though melted into the glass plates of the sidewalk. I simply stood there looking foolish. Hey, mathematician, dreaming? I shivered. Black eyes, varnished with laughter, looked at me, thick Negro lips. It was my old friend, the poet R13, and with him Rosie O. I turned around angrily. I still believed that if they had not appeared, I should have entered the bureau and have torn the square root of minus one out of my flesh. Not dreaming at all, if you will, standing in adoration, I retorted quite brusquely. Oh, certainly, certainly. You, my friend, should never have become a mathematician. You should have become a poet, a great poet. Yes, come over to our trade to the poets, eh? If you will, I can arrange it in a jiffy, eh? R13 usually talks very fast. His words run in torrents. His thick lips sprinkle. Every P is a fountain. Every poet's a fountain. So far, I have served knowledge, and I shall continue to serve knowledge. I frowned. I do not understand jokes, and R13 has the bad habit of joking. Oh, to the deuce with knowledge. Your much heralded knowledge is but a form of cowardice. It is a fact. Yes, you want to encircle the infinite with a wall, and you fear to cast a glance behind the wall. Yes, sir, and if ever you should glance beyond the wall, you would be dazzled and close your eyes. Yes. Walls are the foundation of every human, I began. R13 sprinkled his fountain. Oh, laughed rosily and roundly. I waved my hand. Well, you may laugh. I don't care. I was busy with something else. I had to find a way of eating up, of crushing down that square root of minus one. Suppose, I offered, we go to my place and do some arithmetical problems. The quiet hour of yesterday afternoon came to my memory, perhaps today also. O glanced at R, then serenely and roundly at me. The soft, endearing color of our pink checks came to her cheeks. But today I have a check to him today, a glance at R, and tonight he is busy, so. The moist, varnished lips whispered good-naturedly, half an hour is plenty for us, is it not, O? I am not a great lover of your problems. Let us simply go over to my place and chat. I was afraid to remain alone with myself, or, to be more correct, with that strange new self who, by some curious coincidence, bore my number D503. So I went with R. True. He is not precise, not rhythmic. His logic is jocular and turned inside out. Yet we are. 3 years ago, we both chose our dear Rosie O. This tied our friendship more firmly together than our school days did. In R's room, everything seems like mine. The tables, the glass of the chairs, the table, the closet, the bed. But as we entered, R moved one chair out of place, then another. The room became confused. Everything lost the established order and seemed to violate every rule of Euclid's geometry. R remained the same as always. In Taylor and in mathematics, he always lagged at the tail of the class. We recalled Ploppa, how we boys used to paste the whole surface of his glass legs with paper notes expressing our thanks. We all loved Ploppa. We recalled our priest. It goes without saying that we were not taught the law of ancient religion, but the law of the United States. Our priest had a very powerful voice. A real hurricane would come out of the loudspeaker, and we children would yell the prescribed text after him with all our lung power. We recalled how our scapegrace, R13, used to stuff the priest with chewed paper. Every word was thus accompanied by a paper wad shot out. Naturally, R was punished, for what he did was undoubtedly wrong. But now we laughed heartily. But by we, I mean our triangle, R, O, and I. I must confess, I too. And what if he had been a living one, like the ancient ones, eh? We'd have but a fountain running from the fat, bubbling lips. The sun was shining through the ceiling, the sun above, the sun from the sides, its reflection from below. O on R13's lap, and minute drops of sunlight in O's blue eyes. Somehow my heart warmed up. The square root of -1 became silent and motionless. Well, how is your integral? Will you soon hop off to enlighten the inhabitants of the planet? You'd better hurry up, my boy, or we poets will have produced such a devilish lot that even your integral will be unable to lift the cargo. Every day from 8 to 11, R wagged his head and scratched the back of it. The back of his head is square. It looks like a vallus. I recalled for some reason an ancient painting in the cab. I felt more lively. You too are writing for the integral. Tell me about it. What are you writing about? What did you write today, for instance? Today I did not write. Today I was busy with something else. But busy, sprinkling straight into my face. What else? R frowned. What? Well, if you insist, I'll tell you. I was busy with the death sentence. I was putting the death sentence into verse. An idiot, and to be frank, one of our poets. For 2 years, we all lived side by side with him, and nothing seemed wrong. Suddenly, he went crazy. I said, he am a genius, and I am above law. All that sort of nonsense, but it is not a thing to talk about. The fat lips hung down. The varnish disappeared from the eyes. He jumped up, turned around, and stared through the wall. I looked at his tightly closed little valise and thought, what is he handling in his little valise now? A moment of awkward asymmetric silence. I could not see clearly what was the matter, but I was certain there was something. Fortunately, the antediluvian time of those Shakespeare's and Dostoevsky's, or what were their names, is past, I said in a voice deliberately loud. R turned his face to me. Words sprinkled and bubbled out of him as before, but I thought I noticed there was no more joyful varnish to his eyes. Yes, dear mathematician, fortunately, we are the happy arithmetical mean, as you would put it, the integration from zero to infinity, from imbeciles to Shakespeare. Do I put it right? I do not know why. It seemed to me absolutely uncalled for. I recalled suddenly the other one, her tone, a thin, invisible thread stretched between her and R. What thread? The square root of -1 began to bother me again. I glanced at my badge. 16:25 o'clock. They had only 35 minutes for the use of the pink check. Well, I must go. I kissed O, shook hands with R, and went to the elevator. As I crossed the avenue, I turned around. Here and there, in the huge mass of glass penetrated by sunshine, there were grayish blue squares, the opaque squares of lowered curtains, the squares of rhythmic, taylorized happiness. On the seventh floor, I found R 13 square. The curtains were already lowered. Dear O, dear R, He also has, I do not know why I write this also, but I write as it comes from my pen. He too has something which is not entirely clear in him. Yet I, he, and O, we are a triangle. I confess not an isosceles triangle, but a triangle nevertheless. We, to speak in the language of our ancestors, perhaps to you, my planetary readers, this is the more comprehensible language. We are a family. And one feels so good at times when one is able, for a short while at least, to close oneself within a firm triangle, to close oneself away from anything that. Record 9, Liturgy, Iambus, the Cast Iron Hand. So interesting it mentions liturgy. I'm sorry, I'm just going to go on a little like side note here. When it was discussing how everything is done like symmetrically and in order, and there's a particular, I was picturing a liturgy and how this is like the way that we order societies, or that they try to order societies is much like a liturgy, but it's like a liturgy without Christ. And so it's so interesting that he said that in this, but it's not surprising because this is a Russian author from the 1920s. So he was probably very orthodox in his beliefs and the way that he went about his life. Okay, that's my little side note. A solemn bright day. On such days, one forgets one's weaknesses, inexactitudes, illnesses, and everything is crystalline and imperturbable. Imperturbable. That's a weird word. I've never seen that before. Like our new glass. The plaza of the cube, 66 imposing concentric circle stands, 66 rows of quiet, serene faces, eyes reflecting the shining of the sky, or perhaps it is the shining of the United States. Red like blood are the flowers, the lips of the women, like soft garlands, the faces of the children in the first rows, nearest the place of action, profound, austere, Gothic silence. To judge by the descriptions that reach us from the ancients, they felt somewhat like this during their church services. But they served their nonsensical, unknown God. We serve our rational God, whom we know most thoroughly. Their God gave them nothing but eternal, torturing seeking. Our God gives us absolute truth. That is, He has rid us of any kind of doubt. Their God did not invent anything cleverer than sacrificing oneself. Nobody knows what for. We bring to our God, the United States, a quiet, rational, carefully thought out sacrifice. Yes, it was a solemn liturgy for the United States, a reminiscence of the great days, years of the 200 years, years of the 200 years war, a magnificent celebration of the victory of all over one, of the sum over the individual. That one stood on the steps of the cube, which was filled with sunlight, a white, no, not even white, but already colorless glass face, lips of glass, and only the eyes, thirsty, swallowing black holes leading into that dreadful world from which he was only a few minutes away. The golden badge with the number already had been taken off. His hands were tied with a red ribbon, a symbol of ancient custom. The explanation of it is that in the old days, when this sort of thing was not done in the name of the United States, the convicted naturally considered that they had the right to resist. Hence, their hands were usually bound with chains. On the top of the cube, next to the machine, the motionless metallic figure of him whom we call the well doer. One could not see his face from below. All one could see was that it was bounded by austere, magnificent, square lines. And his hands, did you ever notice how sometimes in a photograph, the hands, if they were too near the camera, appear to be enormous? They then compel your attention, overshadow everything else. Those hands of his, heavy hands, quiet for the time being, were stony hands. It seemed the knees on which they rested must have ached in bearing their weight. Suddenly, one of those hands rose slowly, a slow cast iron gesture, obeying the will of the lifted hand. A number came out on the platform. It was one of the state poets, whose fortunate lot it was to crown our celebration with his verses. Divine, iambic, Brass verses thundered over the many stands. They dealt with the man who, his reason lost in lips like glass, stood on the steps and waited for the logical consequences of his own insane deeds. Ablaze, buildings were swaying in those iambic lines and sprinkling upward their liquefied golden substance. They broke and fell. The green trees were scorched. Their sap slowly ran out, and they remained standing like black crosses, like skeletons. Then appeared Prometheus. That meant us. He harnessed fire with machines and steel and fettered chaos with law. The world was renovated. It became like steel, a son of steel, trees of steel, men of steel. Suddenly, an insane man unchained the fire and set it free, and again the world had perished. Unfortunately, I have a bad memory for poetry, but one thing I am sure of, one could not choose more instructive or more beautiful parables. Another slow, heavy gesture of the cast iron hand, and another poet appeared on the steps of the cube. I stood up, impossible, but thick negro lips, it was he. Why didn't he tell me that he was to be invested with such high? His lips trembled. They were gray. Oh, I certainly understood. To be face to face with the well-doer, face to face with the host of guardians. Yet one should not allow oneself to be so upset. Swift, sharp verses like an axe. They told about an unheard of crime, about sacrilegious poems in which the well-doer was called. But no, I do not dare to repeat. R13 was pale when he finished, and looking at no one, I did not expect such bashfulness of him. He descended and sat down. For an infinitesimal fraction of a second, I saw right beside him somebody's face, a sharp black triangle, and instantly I lost it. My eyes, thousands of eyes, were directed upward toward the machine. Then again, the superhuman cast iron gesture of the hand. Swayed by an unknown wind, the criminal moved. One step, one more, then the last step in his life. His face was turned to the sky, his head thrown back. He was on his last, heavy, stone like fate. The well doer went around the machine, put his enormous hand on the lever. Not a whisper, not a breath around. All eyes were upon that hand. What crushing, scorching power one must feel to be the tool, to be the resultant of hundreds of thousands of wills. How great his lot. Another second, the hand moved down, switching in the current. The lightning sharp blade of the electric ray, a faint crack like a shiver in the tubes of the machine, the prone body covered with a light, phosphorescent smoke. Then suddenly, under the eyes of all, it began to melt, to dissolve with terrible speed, and then nothing, just a pool of chemically pure water which only a moment ago had been so red and had pulsated in his heart. All this was simple. All of us were familiar with the phenomenon. Dissociation of matter, yes, the splitting of the atoms of the human body. Yet every time we witnessed it, it seemed a miracle. It was a symbol of the superhuman power of the well-doer. Above, in front of him, the burning faces of the female numbers, mouths half open from emotion, flowers swaying in the wind. According to the custom, 10 women were covering with flowers the unit of the well-doer, which was still wet with spray, with the magnificent step of a supreme priest. He slowly descended, slowly passed between the rows of stands. Like tender white branches, there rose toward him the arms of the women, and millions like one, our tempestuous cheers. Then cheers in honor of the guardians, who all unseen were present among us. Who knows, perhaps the fancy of the ancient man foresaw them centuries ahead when he created the gentle and formidable guardian angels, assigned to each person from the day of his birth. Yes, there was in our celebration something of the ancient religions, something purifying like a storm. You whose lot it may be to read this, are you familiar with such emotions? I am sorry for you if you are not. I want to go. Let's go 10. Let's do 10. We did 5 last week. We'll do 5 this week. Record 10. A letter, a membrane, hairy eye. Yesterday was for me like the filter paper that chemists use for filtering their solutions. All suspended and superfluous particles remain on the paper. This morning I went downstairs, all purified and distilled, transparent. Downstairs in the hall, the controller sat at a small table, constantly looking at her watch and recording the numbers who were leaving. Her name is Yu. Well, I prefer not to give her number, for I fear I may not write kindly about her, although, as a matter of fact, she is a very respectable, mature woman. The only thing I do not like in her is that her cheeks fold down a little like the gills of a fish, although I don't see anything wrong in this appearance. She scratched with her pen, and I saw on the page D503, and suddenly splash, an ink blot. No sooner did I open my mouth to call her attention to that than she raised her head and blotted me with an inky smile. There is a letter for you. You will receive it, dear. Yes, yes, you will. I knew a letter, after she had read it, must go through the Bureau of Guardians. I think it is unnecessary to explain in detail this natural order of things. I would receive it not later than 12 o'clock, but that tiny smile confused me. The drop of ink clouded the transparency of the distilled solution. At the integrals dock, I could not concentrate. I even made a mistake in my calculations, something that had never happened to me before. At 12 o'clock, again, the rosy brown fish gills smile, and at last the letter was in my hands. I cannot say why I did not read it right there. Instead, I put it in my pocket and ran into my room. I opened it, scanned it quickly, and sat down. It was an official notice to the effect that number I-330 had me assigned to her, and that today at 21 o'clock I was to go to her. Her address was given. No, after all that had happened, after I had shown her frankly my attitude toward her. Besides, how could she know that I did not go to the Bureau of Guardians? She had no way of knowing that I had been ill and could not. And despite all this, a dynamo was whirling and buzzing in my head. Buddha, yellow, lilies of the valley, rosy crescent. Besides, oh, wanted to come to see me today. I was sure she would not believe. How could one believe? That I had absolutely nothing to do with the matter. That I was also sure that we, O and I, would have a difficult, foolish, and absolutely illogical conversation. No, anything but that. Let the situation solve itself mechanically. I would send her a copy of the official communication. While I was hastily putting the paper in my pocket, I noticed my terrible ape like hand. I remembered how that day, during our walk, she had taken my hand and looked at it. Is it possible a quarter to 21, a white northern night, everything was glass, greenish, but it was a different kind of glass, not like ours, not genuine, but very breakable, a thin glass shell. And within that shell, things were flying, whirling, buzzing. I wouldn't have been surprised if suddenly the cupola of the auditorium had risen in slow, rolling clouds of smoke, or if the ripe moon had sent an inky smile like that one at the little table this morning, or if in every house suddenly all the curtains had been lowered, and behind the curtains. I felt something peculiar. My ribs were like iron bars that decidedly interfered, with my heart giving into little space. I stood at a glass door on which were the golden letters I-330. I-330 sat at the table with her back to me. She was writing something. I stepped in. Here, I held out the pink check. I received the notice this noon, and here I am. How punctual you are. Just a minute, please, may I? Sit down. I shall finish in a minute. She lowered her eyes to the letter. What had she there? Behind her lowered curtains. What would she say? What would she do in a second? How to learn it? How to calculate it, since she comes from beyond, from the wild, ancient land of dreams? I looked at her in silence. My ribs were iron bars. The space of the heart was too small. When she speaks, her face is like a swiftly revolving, glittering wheel. You cannot see the separate bars, but at that moment the wheel was motionless. I saw a strange combination, dark eyebrows running right to the temples, a sharp, mocking triangle, and still another dark triangle with its apex upward. Two deep wrinkles from the nose to the angles of the mouth. And these two triangles somehow contradicted each other. They gave the whole face that disagreeable, irritating X, or cross, a face marked obliquely by a cross. The wheel started to turn, its bars blurred. So you did not go to the Bureau of Guardians after all. I did. I did not feel well. I could not. Yes, I thought so. Something must have prevented you. It matters little what. Sharp teeth. A smile. But now you are in my hands. You remember any number who within 48 hours fails to report to the Bureau is considered. My heart banged so forcibly that the iron bars bent. If I were not sitting like a little boy, how stupid. I was caught like a little boy, and stupidly I kept silent. I felt I was in a net, neither my legs nor my arms. She stood up and stretched herself lazily. She pressed the button, and the curtains on all four walls fell with a slight rustle. I was cut off from the rest of the world, alone with her. She was somewhere behind me, near the closest door. The unit was rustling, falling. I was listening, all listening. I remembered, no, it glistened in my mind for 1/100th of a second. I once had to calculate the curve of a new type of street membrane. These membranes are handsomely decorated and are placed over all the avenues, registering all street conversations for the Bureau of Guardians. I remembered a rosy concave, trembling membrane, a strange being consisting of one organ only, an ear. I was at that moment such a membrane. Now the click of the snap of at her collar, at her breast, and lower, the glassy silk rustling over her shoulders and knees over the floor. I heard, and it was clearer than actually seeing. I heard how one foot stepped out of the grayish blue heap of silk, then the other. Soon I'd hear the creak of the bed, and the tensely stretched membrane trembled and registered the silence. No, the sharp hammer like blows of the heart against the iron bars, and endless pauses between beats. And I heard, saw how she, behind me, hesitated for a second, thinking. The door of the closet, it slammed. Again silk. Silk. Well, all right. I turned around. She was dressed in a saffron yellow dress of an ancient style. This was 1,000 times worse than if she had not been dressed at all. Two sharp points glowing with rosiness through the thin tissue. Two burning embers piercing through ashes. Two tender round knees. She was sitting in a low armchair. In front of her on a small square table, I noticed a bottle filled with something poisonously green and two small glasses with thin stems. In the corner of her mouth, she had a very thin paper tube. She was ejecting smoke formed by the burning of what ancient smoke substance whose name I do not now remember. The membrane was still vibrating. Within the sledgehammer was pounding the red hot iron bars of my chest. I heard distinctly every blow of the hammer, and what if she too heard it? But she continued to produce smoke very calmly. Calmly, she looked at me, and nonchalantly, she flicked ashes on the peaked check. With as much self control as possible, I asked, if you still feel that way, why did you have me assigned to you? And why did you make me come here? As if she had not heard it all, she poured some of the green liquid from the bottle into one of the small glasses and sipped it. Wonderful liqueur. Want some? Then I understood. Alcohol. Like lightning, there came to memory what I had seen yesterday, the stony hand of the well-doer, the unbearable blade of the electric ray. There on the cube, the head thrown back, the stretched out body. I shivered. Please listen, I said. You know, do you not, that anyone who poisons himself with nicotine, and more particularly with alcohol, is severely treated by the United States. Dark brows raised high to the temples, the sharp, mocking triangle. It is more reasonable to annihilate a few than to allow many to poison themselves and degeneration, etc. This is true to the point of indecency. Indecency? Yes, to let out into the street such a group of bald headed, naked little truths. Only imagine, please. Imagine, say, that persistent admirer of mine, S. Well, you know him. Then imagine if he should discard the deception of clothes and appear in public in his true form. Oh, she laughed, but I clearly saw her lower, sorrowful triangle. Two deep grooves from the nose to the mouth. And for some reason, these grooves made me think that double curved being, half hunched, with wing like ears. He embraced her, her such, oh. Naturally, I try now merely to express my abnormal feelings of that moment. Now, as I write, I understand perfectly that all this is as it should be. That he, S4711, like any other honest number, has a perfect right to the joys of life, and that it would be unjust. But I think the point is quite clear. I-330 laughed, a long, strange laugh. Then she cast a look at me, into me. The most curious thing is that I am not in the least afraid of you. You were such a dear. I am sure of it. You would never think of going to the bureau and reporting that I drink liqueurs and smoke. You will be sick or busy or I don't know what. Furthermore, I am sure you will drink this charming poison with me. What an impertinent, mocking tone. I felt definitely that in a moment I would hate her. Why in a moment? In fact, I hated her all the time. I-330 tilted the little glass of green poison straight into her mouth. Then she stood up, and all rosy through the translucent saffron yellow tissue. She made a few steps and stopped behind my chair. Suddenly, her arms were about my neck. Her lips grew into mine. No, even somewhere much deeper, much more terrible. I swear all this was very unexpected for me. That is why, perhaps, for I could not, at this moment, I see clearly, I could not myself have the desire to unbearably sweet lips. I suppose it was the taste of the liqueur. It was as though burning poison were being poured into me, and more and more. I tore away from the earth and began revolving as an independent planet, down, down, following an incalculable curve. What happened next, I am unable to describe only in an approximate way, only by way of more or less suitable analogies. It never occurred to me before, but it is true. We who live on the earth, we are always walking over a seething red sea of fire, which is hidden in the womb of the earth. We never think of it, but imagine the ground under our feet suddenly transformed into a thin glass shell. Suddenly we should behold. I became glass like and saw within myself. There were two selves in me, one the former D503, numbered D503, and the other, before that other used only to show his hairy paws from time to time. But now that whole other self, left his shell. That shell was breaking, and in a moment, grasping the last straw, the arms of the chair, with all my strength, I asked loudly, so as to hear my first self, where did you get this poison? Oh, this? A physician, one of my what? And my other self jumped up suddenly and yelled, I won't allow it. I want no one but me. I shall kill anyone who, because I saw my other self grasp her rudely with his hairy paws, tear the silk, and put his teeth in her flesh. I remember exactly his teeth. I do not remember how, but I-330 slipped away, and I saw her straighten, her head raised high, her eyes overlaid by that cursed, impenetrable curtain. She stood leaning with her back against the closet door and listening to me. I remember I was on the floor. I embraced her limbs, kissed her knees, and cried supplicatingly. At once, right away, right away. Sharp teeth, the sharp, mocking triangle of the brows. She bent over and in silence unbuttoned my badge. Yes, yes, dear, dear. I began hastily to remove my uniform, but I-330, silent as before, lifted my badge to my eyes, showing me the clock upon it. It was 22:25. I became cold. I knew what it meant to be out in the street after 22:30. My insanity disappeared at once. I was again I. I saw clearly one thing. I hated her, hated her, hated. Without saying goodbye, without looking back, I ran out of the room. Hurriedly, trying to fasten the badge back in its place, I ran down the stairs. I was afraid lest someone notice me in the elevator and tore out into a deserted street. Everything was in its place. Life so simple, ordinary, orderly, glittering glass houses, pale glass skies, a greenish, motionless night. But under that cool glass, something wild, something red and hairy, was silently seething. I was gasping for breath, but I continued to run so as not to be late. Suddenly, I felt that my badge, which I had hurriedly pinned on, was detaching itself. It came off and fell to the sidewalk. I bent over to pick it up, and in the momentary silence, I heard somebody's steps. I turned. Someone small and hunched was disappearing around the corner, at least so it seemed. I started to run as fast as I could. The wind whistled in my ears. At the entrance to my house, I stopped and looked at the clock. 1 minute to 22:30. I listened, nobody behind. It was my foolish imagination, the effect of the poison. The night was full of torture. My bed seemed to lift itself under me, then to fall again, then up again. I used autosuggestion. At night, all the numbers must sleep. Sleeping at night is the duty just like working during the day. To sleep at night is necessary for the next day's work. Not to sleep at night is criminal. Yet I could not sleep. I could not. I was perishing. I was unable to fulfill my duties to the United States. I. Okay. So there we go. That's record 6 through 10. Look, the dogs are out playing. Next week, we'll pick up on record 11. I hope y'all are enjoying this. I certainly am. I enjoy sharing novels. Uh, they're some of my favorite things. So I I must go now if I can get this to stop. There we go. All right, cool. We will talk to you later.